responding to the objections of Halloween. Okay, I've been having a look then through the various anti-Halloween messages that I've read on Christian websites and literature and things like that. And I'd just like to list 5 of the usual objections to Halloween and to horror, I guess. And then I just want to offer some alternative responses to those objections. Again, I'm not trying to do this in a battling, conflictual type way, but just for a little bit of a balanced argument. And so here we go. Number 1. Halloween is dangerous for children. Children often get a mention in the anti-Halloween rhetoric, almost as if adults, are just too grown up and mature to be at risk. It's like they must be out of range of Halloween's scary grip, but the children are the ones at risk. And the objection is this: it's that Halloween poses an actual, genuine danger to children. Now, one danger that Christians would say is that it actively involves them in the occult, and so we'll look at that in a second. But they also say that it's bad because Halloween introduces children to fear and to the threat of danger, or at least it tries to push them into a fearful situation. In other words, it tries to scare kids, and that, they argue, is unhealthy. Now, this theory seems to ignore something that I think is really quite obvious. Kids actually enjoy safe scares. I mean, Lynn Hatcher, who's the author I mentioned earlier, he wrote a really good book called The Magic 8-Ball Test, and it's called A Christian Defense of Halloween. And he describes how a father, for example, might chase his child around the house pretending to be a lion. And I do that all the time with my daughter. And I tell you what, she absolutely loves it. I creep up on her when she's like running, she's crawling away or she's running away, and I'm saying things like, "I'm coming to get you," and I'm sort of growling and pretending, and she's just laughing her head off. She is not rocking backwards and forth in her cot, traumatized by this each night. No, she cries when I don't do it. Because for her, there is something exciting about it. It's an adventure. And all the best adventures in the world always have a scary element to it. That's what makes it an adventure. Halloween provides children with opportunities for some safe scares. I think they need some safe scares sometimes because, believe me, they have plenty of unsafe scares in the world. Kids have no opportunity to rehearse fear. Kids have to cope with the threat of real, genuine, horrible fear. The fear of being bullied or reading about paedophiles chasing them on the internet or dogs attacking them on the street. And of course, the very real fear of not being liked at school or not being popular. Kids can get so exhausted living in this world of genuine, sharp and spiky fear. And that sort of fear is absolutely no fun at all. That fear eats you up. And I've got I'm not keen on promoting that sort of fear, of course not. However, you get Halloween, which gives them an opportunity to engage in some of these safe scares, which are often actually a lot of fun and can fill them with a sense of adventure and excitement. So it brings life alive in a way. Will there be some kids who will get too scared and end up upset and freaked out by Halloween? Of course there will be. There'll be some who will get terrified by it. Just as in the same way you might get a few children who get absolutely petrified watching the brooms come alive in Fantasia, and they can't handle it. And I'm not for a second suggesting that we ought to scare children against their wishes. That's like wrong. If your kids don't like Halloween, fine, don't do Halloween. But for those who do find themselves attracted to it, I think there is something to be said in the safe scare. And to me, Halloween provides that in a safe environment where pretty much, as a family, if you've got a family, you explore all of this sort of scary stuff. I don't think Halloween is as dangerous as people say it is. I haven't got time or an inclination at the moment, actually, to get into the whole argument that horror themes will end up making children want to kill people in real life. I just don't really buy that argument. Perhaps I should return to that on a separate podcast. Number 2, Halloween celebrates the occult. Now, this is another objection, but actually, is it true? Well, we have to ask this question then. What exactly is the occult? What do we mean by the occult? Well, the word itself means hidden, and it tends to be used in quite a vague way, actually, to cover those beliefs that deal with the supernatural, but are not part of major religious traditions like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. So, for example, some Christians will tend to use this word occult to cover anything spiritual which is not solely in the direction of Jesus and is not a part of an established major religion. So, they can't, we can't put the label on, that's Buddhist, that's Buddhism, or that's, Hinduism. If you can't pin it down, you might want to say it's the New Age, or some even might go so far as to say it's the occult, this sort of hidden supernatural path. But in practice, in Christian circles, I'd say that the word occult is a bit more specific than that, in that it tends to be associated with either devil worship or connection with evil spirits. Now, this is something that is prohibited in the Bible, and so I can really understand why Christians would get touchy about a festival that might be an occult type thing. I mean, I don't think that I should worship the devil. I don't know if any of you guys listening to this are Satanists, and you're very welcome to listen to it, but I just have to disagree and say I'm not a guy who wants to worship the devil, right? There you go. Whether he be the actual devil of the Bible or a representation of rebelliousness against the conformities of God and all that sort of stuff. I guess I'm a Jesus guy, I suppose. And I also don't think I ought to make contact with the dead or do divination, telling the future and all that sort of stuff. But the problem is, I think, where does spooky reflection and fun become actual occult involvement? I mean, for example, I was training to be a minister when a lecturer came in to show us some tarot cards. And the guy was called John Drain, and he wanted to show us these tarot cards because he was using the imagery on them to share his Christian faith with people at psychic fairs and New Age festivals across the country. Now, he was not using the tarot cards to contact spirits, but he was using the pictures on them as a common ground to share his faith with other people, and also to learn about other people's beliefs as well. Now, what was interesting was that many of the ministers in that room that day, I remember it's a sunny morning, they just clammed up when the cards were passed around for us to have a look. And they were reluctant to even touch the cards, to touch the paper. Because they wondered if they either, I guess they thought the cards might have an inherent power, or, more likely, that somehow they would be delving into the occult by touching them. Or that they would be involving themselves in forbidden things. And it was fascinating to see how powerful the threat of the occult, unquote, as it were, was and is in many Christian circles. To such an extent, actually, that in a sense, I felt they were giving Satan too much power and too much credit. I picked up the cards and I just looked at them, and just because I was interested in what he was saying, and I did not for a second want to use them to divine my future, but I wasn't bothered about picking them up because I know that God is bigger than the devil, and I think we can find hints of the gospel in the most unlikely of places. But for them, they saw it as, this is the occult, and it seemed to give the devil more credit than I think he deserved. So clearly there must be a crossing line between being actively involved in the occult and then, I think, in a perfectly acceptable engagement in it without involvement. By that I mean, I don't want to give the wrong impression. I used to do things like Ouija boards, and I've jacked all of that stuff in since I've become a Christian. I don't even read my horoscope anymore. But does that mean, therefore, I should never discuss the subject? Or that I should never learn more about it? Or that I can't sit down and have a conversation with someone who's into that sort of thing? Is reading a ghost story at Christmas actually me delving into occult behaviour that's prohibited in the Bible? Is when a child dresses up as a witch for Halloween, does that mean they are actually worshipping the devil and attempting to communicate with the evil forces of this world? I personally do not think so. And I think the overreaction of sheer terror and panic from some Christians when it comes to these things, who are so terrified they can't even pick up a tarot card, seems to me to make the devil even stronger than he is. And for me, I think it's possible to enjoy Halloween, even to get dressed up and still hold on to this true and simple fact. God's amazing and he's big, and the devil is not as significant as he wants you to believe.